Alright, now that we have our document, let's go ahead and start exploring some of the basic tools that we're going to find in Illustrator. As we discussed in class, we have two main ways to select objects. The regular selection, which looks just like your cursor, it's a solid filled in pointing arrow. And then we have the direct select, which this is sometimes referred to as the open arrow. If you need the quick keys for them, the regular selection is V, and then A is the quick key for the direct select. These two are going to help you navigate through your objects and help manipulate them or reposition them. Once I get some objects down, I'll go ahead and show you the differences between each of those as a refresher. As we discussed, anything that has the little drop-down triangle is going to have a tear-off. So if you want, go ahead, hover on this sort of highlighted, darkened bar, let go, and you're going to get a little sort of tear-off. You can position this wherever you want on your screen. While you're learning, this is usually a good system so that you can sort of see what's going on. The line tool, pretty straightforward. We're just going to, make some lines. If you hold down your Shift key, it's going to constrain it to a straight line, vertically or horizontal, or it's going to do a 45-degree angle either way. So you have a little bit of manipulation between that with your directions if you want something to be really precise versus something that's more, I guess, an organic direction. We have the arc tool, same thing. How you draw it is going to give you your width, so you can see if I pull it over here, the arc's going to be longer. If I put it here, the arc's going to be shorter. If I hold down my Shift key, ditto, it's going to constrain it. And I'm just going to work in the artboard just like we did in class. I'm going to push the artboard over so that I can use the pasteboard. And remember, a quick key for that is the space bar. So it turns into that little grabby hand, and then I have more access to the actual pasteboard. Spiral, pretty straightforward as well. You're going to make spirals, and remember, if you do not let go and you use your up and down arrow, the spiral is going to increase or decrease. So down arrow will decrease. Here's our up arrow, it's increasing. Down arrow is going to decrease. And remember, it remembers what you did last. So if you don't want that, up arrow it again and get your spiral back. Same thing with our grid. Up arrow will create extra lines. Down arrow is going to take them away. Right arrow is going to add to our verticals, and the left is going to take those away. So if you want a really, gritty grid, so to speak, and I'm going to switch to my regular selection so you can see it. If you want that gritty grid, it's going to give you more of those options. It looks more like a mesh. And again, it will remember it. Oops, let's get that selected. It's going to remember that. So whatever you do, it's going to keep that until you change it back. Same thing with the target. So if I draw it by default, this is what it's going to look like. I'm not letting go. So I'll do it again, not letting go. Up arrow adds, down arrow takes away with the sort of radiation. Right arrow adds, left arrow takes away, so you can get that perfect sort of bullseye look if that is what you were looking for. And again, it remembers it. Hold down that Shift key on either the grid or the target, and then you're going to be able to get the perfect constrained proportions. So in that case, a circle, and in the rectangular grid, it's going to turn into a square. So whichever one you're looking for, you can make it the rectangle or shift it, and you're going to get that square. All right, Apple 0. If we remember that, it's up here under our View menu. Apple 0, fit the artboard in the window. Our plus and our minus is our zoom out. So let's get used to those. So Apple 0, we're going to fit it into the artboard. Apple plus on our keypad is going to zoom in, and Apple minus is going to zoom out. Apple 0 brings you back to the default. Select all is Apple A right there. Select all. That's going to get everything that's been created selected, and if you want a fresh slate, go ahead and hit delete on that. That way you can keep experimenting. Remember, in this early stage, we just want to experiment. Let's go down to the next. I did this automatically without thinking. When I was finished with this tool, I just went ahead, hit the X, and then it recollapses it. If you forget the line tool is there, you might want to reset it because it will remember your last tool. This has a drop down with the rectangle. Go ahead, select it, and then you're going to have all of your shapes tools. You can do your rectangle, hold down the shift, you can have a square. Rounded corner rectangle, hold down the shift, you'll get a rounded cornered square. Ellipse, you'll get that circle in space or perspective. Hold down the shift key, you're going to get a perfect circle. Polygons, same thing. You can see it's pretty flexible. Hold down the shift key, it's going to constrain the base to your piece. One more little trick on this. If I don't let go and I hold my up and down arrow, up is going to add sides, down arrow is going to take away. So if you're looking for that triangle, that's how you're going to get your triangles. So if you are looking for that, that sometimes is a question. Just know, a triangle is just a three-sided shape, so go to your polygons. And it will remember it. So if you want it back to the normal, polygon that we were looking at, you have to just up your arrow back the next time you use it. Star tool, again, hold down the shift key. The sort of bottoms remain parallel with your page. I'm going to do my space bar so I can get more of my pasteboard use. I'm going to draw another star, but I'm not going to let go. Up arrow turns it into more of a sunburst. Down arrow is going to take the sides away, so you're going to have less. Oh, look, a triangle. So you can get it that way also, depending on your inset. So we can keep it at the normal star for that. And of course, our friend, the solar flare, if we click and drag, you can see, if I'm not letting go, the intensity of the drag is going to be the size of your first sort of flare, and then the second click is going to be the reflection. And I'll do another one. Click and then drag. And remember, I'm going to go to my regular select. When these overlap, you're going to get the transparencies with it. They're really cool. Just, think of them as similar to Photoshop filters. A little of these go a long way. So they are going to be somewhat obvious, but I know in the early stages with this program, they actually can be a lot of fun. I'm just going to delete those. And I'm going to reset it back to that rectangle, so if I forget, that way I know it's right there. Okay, so now we're going to have a little chit-chat about our regular selection. Regular selection, when you click on your object, is going to move it wherever you want. You can do your resize. Now remember, if you don't hold your shift key down, you're not going to constrain the proportions. And I'm going to do an undo so I keep my proportions. If you want your proportions, which for the most part you are, just as a heads up in my classes, because proportions do look odd with our designs, go ahead, hold that shift key down, and it's going to constrain it into that proportion. Adversely, our direct select is going to take all of our objects and make each of our anchor points be editable. So our anchor point is at the end of each line segment, or that path. So you can see I still have my invisibles on here for the demo. The path is the line segment, and the anchors are the points. And right now, it looks like they're all selected. So I want to work with this point, and you can see when I clicked on it, there was a shift. So I'm going to deselect, reselect, click on that, and then just that one point is going to be editable. So this is nice because now you can sort of get into each of these shapes and start manipulating them further. So you can get unique forms that maybe haven't existed before and they're just coming from your head. That shape couldn't possibly look further from the star, but yet we started with that star. So the direct select is going to give us the insight that we need to make our illustrations, our drafts, our objects be more unique and individual and more customizable. The last two things I want to go over is the brush tool. So we already sort of talked about that in our class. We have our paintbrush, and I'm just going to do a couple little swirls. Oh, so lovely. And under there is the little, we have our little hover thing, so we know there's more, and then we have the blob brush. So I'm going to do the same sort of shapes down here. That sort of echoes what we were just doing up there, so that we can see the difference. Whenever we go to our regular select and we click on our brush, it is going to be there, but each of these are unique and individual open form shapes. We can go in, We can change the stroke width, and remember your stroke width is usable for all of these, so you can change any of them. So don't forget to use that for your projects. So maybe 12 points too large, maybe 6 isn't right. If you're not quite sure, activate your mouse in there, and again, up arrow, down arrow, and then you're going to be able to see exactly what stroke size you're looking for. The blob brush is different because it's going to sort of blob them all together. So you can see our stroke has disappeared. Now we can add a stroke to this, so we do get it a little bit thicker, but it's going to move everything as a unit. Whereas this, even though they were intersecting, they aren't going to change. They're going to have to, move independently. So if you want those to move together that we just created up with the regular brush, hold down your Shift key, select both, and then object group them. So when I deselect, reselect, now they're going to move together. But our blob stays as a blob and stays together. So those do have a lot of applications within what you will be working on for our projects. And I'm just going to reset that to the regular brush just as a default. Pencil functions pretty much the same. It's just a little bit thinner and it doesn't smooth quite as much. Pencil tools, they're going to be case specific to what you're working on. I have found in the past most of the students do gravitate towards either the brush or the blob brush, and then eventually work their way into the pen tool, which will be its own topic coming up. So what I would recommend when you're in this stage, just get used to selecting the difference between regular select and then your direct select. And remember, you can just click on those anchor points and have editability and movability, and play around with the handles of the anchors so that you can see how the curves function. So larger handles are going to give you a larger curve. The closer they are is going to be less of a curve. So and I'll tuck one of them in, this one's going to show then a transition from straight to smooth. And when we get into the pen tool, you will work a lot more with this.